Hey, how you doing, Daniel?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, sorry, it took me a while to get on there for a
Oh,
second.
it's all good. Just glad to have you on. I've been a big fan of yours for quite some time, actually. Just want to welcome you to Heavy Brand Podcast here in Detroit, Michigan. So, Daniel, introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners, please.
Oh, well, first of all, thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk with you today. Um, for the viewers, my name is Daniel Peers-Hoegen. I was originally born in England, and I'm the founder of Dankind Academy, which operated in Nairobi, Kenya, and now in Kampala, Uganda. And I'm also the founder of We Are Ballers too.
Beautiful, beautiful. Daniel, I remember a few years back, I was coaching. I was an assistant coach at a high school in Colorado, and I had two or three young ball players from originally from South Sudan, and I was looking for ways to connect with them more. So I was scrolling through YouTube. I think I typed in like South Sudanese basketball, something like that, and I ran across your Dankind Academy on YouTube, and I was like, "Oh man, this is great! Like whoever's running this thing is doing a pretty great job." At that time, I didn't know who you were, but giving a platform for young African basketball players, to be able to, take their talents and capitalize off their talents and earn a better living one day, whether it's through the education simply or
Yeah,
through basketball or both, you know.
definitely.
So tell the people how did you come about with the idea of the Dankind Academy?
So once again, I was born in England, which is mainly a football country, or soccer, as you would say in the US. Um, it's a country where we play cricket, rugby. Those are the main sports. But basketball is growing in England, and one of the big reasons for that is because of Luol Deng. Um, I mean, Luol, obviously, he played at Blair Academy and Duke, and then in the NBA for a long 15-year career. Um, but we kind of claimed him as our own in England too. So he was actually a refugee from South Sudan who sought political asylum in England,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously he was a team captain for the Great Britain team in the Olympics. And him going to the NBA, though, it was a really big deal for English basketball. We've had some other NBA players, but not as high profile as him.
Right.
And so I became more interested in Luol, where he was from originally. And I remember reading an article about the fact that he's from the Dinka tribe, which are the tallest people in the world.
Yeah. Real talk.
So, and then the article also explained about all of the continuing problems that African faces from an infrastructure point of view, sports wise. And so at the time, I was working for my dad, who runs a charity in England, tries to get coaches into schools. So I was fundraising and I was coaching for him. But I started to have this idea myself of why not go where we could have the most impact. If they're struggling with these things, that's something that I would be more than happy to do, and I think I could have a big impact that way. So I did actually what you did. I went onto YouTube and started looking at videos.
Oh yeah.
And the first kid that I saw who had a video, I started to contact him on Facebook. And originally, the plan was to bring kids to France and link them with a French club team. But this was at a time when South Sudan had just got their independence. So this was 2011, 2010 when I started to try and make something happen. But there was no embassies. Even the country had just got its independence in 2011. But this first player of mine told me about how many refugees there were in Nairobi. So I went out to Nairobi and then realized that there was something to be done there. And that's when I decided to start Dankind Academy there in Nairobi, Kenya.
Excellent, excellent. Now, a couple weeks back on one of my episodes, it wasn't my usual episode where I interview one guest. It was more of a a virtual basketball clinic. And I had some young African basketball players on the show. I had a college coach on the show, and I had a former college coach on the show as well. And we were just answering questions from some of these young African basketball players. They were all from different parts of the continents. Most of them were from Ghana and West Africa. A couple were from South Sudan, but were residing in Kenya and Uganda. Yeah. And a common question that I get even now, even after the event is, Mister, I want to come to the United States, and I want to attend school here. I want to play basketball here. Yeah. You ever get approached with questions like that?
Consistently. I mean, that's literally the goal of every single player that I've come in touch with. Physically being in Kenya and Uganda, but also on Facebook all the time, I consistently get messages asking me if they can help, if I can help them doing exactly that. And that's kind of the trajectory and the dream for all of them there. And once again, even in England, where I'm from, that's still kind of the process that everyone wants to go through. They want to get their education in the US. If they can get a D1 scholarship, get their degree, and either go to the MBA, or like you said before, with that, and they can go on to do whatever they want. That's the dream of every player that I've come across so far. So.
Now, what my response usually is I ask like, how old are you? What grade are you in? And my thing is, if it's high school, the best thing that I can do is, I used to be a former, basketball coach, high school basketball coach. The best thing I can do is I can research certain U.S. high schools that already have South Sudanese or other African basketball players at that school on their respective basketball teams, and at least that gives me a general idea of whether or not a school may be interested in bringing over another African player. And then second, I tell that player, you have to put forth the effort into reaching out to these schools. Once I give you the contact information, you and your parents have to do your research, contact these schools. I don't work at these schools, so it's up to you and mom and dad or your guardian, to reach out to these contacts. How do you usually respond to these questions or requests?
Well, what I've been doing over the past year is hosting sessions during the high school vacations in Kampala with literally a purpose of making highlight clips of the kids. So the 14 to 18-year-olds, I'll post those on YouTube, and through my contacts that I have in the US with coaches, but I also get coaches who approach me after seeing the videos, similar to yourself, that show interest. Obviously, there's not a lot of coverage of basketball in general in Africa, but there's especially not at that level either, high school age level. So over the past year, that was what I was really focused on filming, was 14 to 18-year-olds, so that coaches could see these kids. And then from there, it's a conversation, like you said, between them and the coach. But I also help them out and try and go through the process of getting their paperwork together. They need their school transcripts, and then have to go to the embassy and have an interview, and get their passport photos for the visa process. So I try and help them with that too. Yeah.
Now, that's the part that I don't have much knowledge of. I'm great at finding the schools that are known to bring over African basketball players, but I'm not too knowledgeable on what kind of documents they would need from their respective African countries. Because I myself, I'm African, I'm Ghanaian, and I was born in Ghana in 1981. But once I came to the United States in 1987, 33 years ago, I haven't been back, so I'm not completely familiar with what kind of documents they would need. I don't know if you'd be able to do this during the show, or maybe some other time when me and you communicate, but would you be able to send some kind of website link that shows like what kind of documentation
Yeah.
kids work on?
That's actually on the U.S. consulate website. So there's guidelines for exactly that. Basically, you have to have a medical exam and proof of that. You have to have 4 passport photos. You have to have your school transcript to be used with the school so that they can get your I-20 done. And then with your I-20, you just need to book and reserve an interview online, and then go to the consulate to have an interview. And then from the interview, they give you a decision whether you're accepted or denied. But leading up to that interview, you also have to fill out a whole questionnaire online as well. But I mean, that's as far as Uganda is concerned and trying to get into the US. It's about $160, I think. If I recall.
US dollars or?
US dollars, yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. So for the kids, they obviously need their passport and their birth certificate and their national ID to even start that process, which is about $200 as well. So yeah, so that's the process. And then
at least $400 total dollars, US dollars.
Yeah, I'd say about that. Yeah, to have the medical, all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, it's a lot of barriers and hurdles for young African basketball players to make it out to the United States.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, there are schools that are willing to pay that and find sponsors to get it done. And I mean, there's the flight on top of that to actually get them out there as well. So that's another cost. But fortunately, there are schools that are willing to give these kids an opportunity. I think in the last year, I managed to help with 10 scholarships.
Oh,
so
wow.
3 of the kids are already there in the US, but then 7 others are because of this pandemic, are literally waiting for all of this to end so that they can get a date to have an interview and get over there. But,
now, Daniel, I appreciate all the work you do. I would love to be a part of this, and I would love to also help, some of our young ball players. So,
yeah.
I'm going to lean on you for guidance and how to get started.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I know, like, when I lived in Colorado, Colorado has a large South Sudanese immigrant population. Now that I'm back in Michigan, it's not the case. In Michigan, you see a lot more Ghanaians and Nigerians.
Okay.
So different states have different, different demographics as far as the type of Africans that are here.
Yeah. I know. Nebraska too also has a lot of South
Sudanese.
Yeah. In Omaha. Yeah. I mean, these are refugees. It's the similar situation in Australia is another country that takes in all the South Sudanese. But Uganda, obviously, where I'm living right now, is the place where there's the most South Sudanese outside of South Sudan, and it's it's the country the closest to South Sudan too. So yeah, it's only a short 8-hour bus ride, to the
country. Wow, okay.
But yeah, so the like the community where I'm living, I'm in Uganda, but it's a very international community, and it's where there's a lot of South Sudanese, there's a lot of Ethiopians, Eritreans.
Is that Kampala or?
In Kampala, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, they stick out. You can't miss the South Sudanese.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, it's always beautiful to see how the sport of basketball can bring together so many different ethnic groups. I know, as a coach in Colorado, I would go to different rec centers, and I would see young African basketball players from Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, South Sudan, and they all, speak different native tongues, but the basketball has only one language.
Absolutely.
It's to compete, to have fun, and to win. And it's beautiful seeing that. It's beautiful hearing from and seeing guys like you doing your best to, help out our future.
Yeah.
Now today, I tuned in a little bit, and I saw you were speaking in fluent Spanish, you know. And another
Yeah,
time you're speaking in French. How many
yeah.
different languages do you speak?
Those, those are the three that I speak. So I was born in England, but then I grew up in France, actually. My mother was a teacher at the American School of Paris there. So I went there for high school, but before that I went to a French school and learned French. And then while I was in high school, I started to learn Spanish. So, but once again, my players, for example, all these kids that I've been with in Kenya and
Multilingual, huh?
in Kampala, they're all quadrilingual.
Oh,
So they
quadrilingual.
speak
Okay.
Arabic, they speak English, they speak their own tribal language in South Sudan, and then a lot of them speak the East African Kiswahili.
Okay.
So a lot of them speak four languages. Yeah, for me, English, French, and Spanish is enough. It's nice to actually do this in English it's the first time. So.
You know, that's very encouraging. You know, I'm glad that, you know, schools here in the US will see that when these young African basketball players, you know, come over, you know, they're focused, they're talented, they're skilled in so many different things, you know. What are some of the other barriers that our young basketball talent have to experience?
As far as coming to the US or in
Yes, sir.
Africa itself?
Even back home when they're trying to make the transition over here.
Yeah, well, obviously, it's a completely different game altogether. Already, the US, it being such a big basketball country and the level being so high, that's obviously something to adapt to. And obviously, in Kampala and in East Africa in general, as far as training sessions go, coaching, these kids are not doing 2 and 3 practices a day. They're not even doing that per week. So the level of coaching is totally different. The infrastructure is totally different. In Kampala, other than at the private schools, there's basically one indoor court that people have access to, and everything else is outdoor. So these guys they're not playing on wood floors. They're not playing on fiberglass backboards. They don't have the same facilities, and in most places, they're just playing pickup basketball. So there's a lot for them to adapt to. They don't have the kind of things that they do in the U.S., where they're waking up early in the morning and going to practice before class, and then having a whole school day, and then practicing again. That just doesn't exist. That's one of the things I'd like to have over there in my program if I get to build this academy the way I want it to be. So yeah, it's a totally different basketball culture. I think the guys have the heart, they have the passion, they have the motivation, the desire. Really good kids, great attitude, so they're willing to learn, and they desperately want the opportunity. But I don't think the majority of Africans have any idea what's waiting for them on the other side from that perspective. Like I said, they're great kids, so for them to be able to get an education and to be able to play basketball, it's changing everything for them. I mean, it's not just an opportunity, but it's their way of not just getting out of the situation they're in, but taking their life to a whole other level too. And so they're blessed to be doing that. They know they're blessed to be doing that, and I think they do go through a period of shock and adaptation, but I think that's normal for anyone going anywhere. It's about them getting out of their comfort zone and adapting and learning, all those things, and they're all willing to do that, so it's I wouldn't see it as a problem per se, but it's a getting used to period for them when they come out.
Now, I've had Cynthia Mumbo on the show. I've had
Yeah.
Philale on the show, and I'm always tapping into their expertise, and I'm going to do the same with you. So, for people out here in the United States that want to help the cause of getting African basketball players over here for better opportunities, whether it's education or basketball through education. what can we do to help leaders like yourself? What can we do to help you?
Simply get in touch. I mean, as I said, I have these YouTube videos of the players. So one thing that you can do is simply check out the videos. And if there's a player that you're interested to, connections with coaches is a huge plus, obviously. So if you do know anyone who is part of a program, who is a coach and is at a school where, like boarding schools especially, where they can accommodate kids, that's obviously paramount. As far as I'm concerned myself, I've obviously posted videos also about what I'm planning to do in Africa itself. Right now, at the moment, I'm doing applications and sending out applications to people through the Charity Commission in England. But very soon, I'll be posting that on GoFundMe to raise money. But I think even having these kinds of conversations is great to get people thinking of that. I don't think people realize to what extent it is a life-changing opportunity for these kids. I mean, it's some of them, as I said, are refugees. Others are, still living in situations where they don't have enough money to go to school in Kampala. A lot of the South Sudanese that are there would do anything for an opportunity to get to the States. So there are schools doing it, and that I'm sure there are more that are capable of doing it. So getting the word out there and just approaching coaches and explaining that to them. You can obviously send the links of the videos that I've posted online to them to show them, look, like, these kids are very talented. If they're given the right opportunity and they're coached, they can go, the sky's the limit for them.
And those videos are very high quality too. I don't know how much money you spent on those camera equipment, Daniel, but those are some pretty good cameras.
The cameras are cheap, yeah. Actually, the camera is cheap. It's just a lot of time. Yeah. It's just a lot of time editing and downloading the clips and processing and rendering. It's a long process, but it's worth it. I mean, that's what I'm there to do, especially right now, while planning to build the academy. This past year, it's all I've really been doing is filming and trying to get that stuff out there. So.
Wonderful.
Every day I'm posting, and I do get more and more coaches approaching me, so it's working.
I definitely volunteer, from this day forward, to join that movement, as far as, as long as you show me how to do it. Yeah. I'm gonna do my best to reach out to some of these schools, even the old high school that I coached at.
There you go. I think that's the best first step forward, is just to get the word out there to the people who are in charge of programs, and explain. I think showing them the videos is a good way to explain, so they can see it for themselves.
Now, tell us more about We Are Ballers, because now I see you have Dankind, and now you also have We Are Ballers. Break that down for us.
Yeah. So when I went to Kenya. My dad was also able to put me in touch with a coach who coached in the US, John Cofino. He coached in the D League, he coached in the NCAA. And then I also had another African coach who went to junior college in the States and who was playing for the #1 team in Kenya at the time. So I had two coaches doing the daily sessions and coaching the team. We had a team in a league. So basically, we were all living in a house. So I was renting out the house, and I was paying for the electricity, the water, the food, paid a maid. But then basically, from that managerial point of view, the one thing I didn't have was a cameraman, and I knew that we needed to film these kids. So I started off with everything on social media was Dankind Academy, Facebook, website, YouTube. And then once I came back from Kenya, I still had all of my equipment. So when I came back and I was with my dad once again fundraising with his charity, I was in England and I had my cameras. And so I thought, well, I might as well continue to film. And then I went from England to France, and I continued filming there. And so I decided to decided to come up with We Are Ballers for all the non-Dankind Academy content, basically. Yeah, so I was filming. I was filming in England. I was filming in the Netherlands. I was filming in France. And then this past year, when I was in Kampala, getting to know the league and the federation, etc., I was also filming the league there. So all of that content that is not Dankind Academy is We Are Ballers. But I also plan on taking all of the footage that I have from 2012 up until now, and doing episodes to kind of explain the process. And I think I'm hoping that will also help bring attention to what is really going on over there. Like I said, it's great to do this first podcast in English because this is the first time I've really discussed it publicly, other than the videos that I've done. But I would like to do some episodes, We Are Ballers episodes, explaining my whole kind of journey from 2012 to now. And so I think that would be interesting for people. Obviously not for everyone, but for people who are interested in African basketball, want to get a better understanding of like what's really going on there. And that kind of happened organically. Like I never studied to be a cameraman or to be a film editor or anything like that. But I mean, it was just such an unbelievable experience in Kenya for me. My first time in Africa, experiencing the culture and the basketball community, that I just started just filming just everything that kind of like, I had my cameras on me all the time. And so, yeah, I just started filming interesting things, the things I saw, things that I was observing. And so it kind of went from there. And now, once again, so with We Are Ballers, I have all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and every day I'm posting. I wake up and that's the kind of first thing I do is do all that kind of posting. So Dankind Academy and We Are Ballers, all the social media. And then from there, I go on to whatever I have to do, whether it's applications or talking with coaches, dealing with the kids. Look, like I've been searching online for all the email addresses of the NCAA coaches recently. That's what I've been doing for the last 5 days, where I'm just getting their email addresses so that I can send them something to, explain what I'm trying to do. But yeah, so those are my days. And then when that's what I'm doing during the pandemic. But obviously during the week, usually in Uganda, there's games on Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. So I'll be filming women's, men's, looking for youth talent amongst it. And then I host my own sessions, which are Dankind Academy, but I also throw that in there on the We Are Ballers content because that's what I'm filming too. So
this is man, I'm excited. I got goosebumps just listening to you, man. Music to my ears. We have Africans have a lot of great things going on for them.
Absolutely.
We have smart, hardworking young talent, athletic, that could benefit a lot of these high school and college programs. These kids have a lot to offer. Definitely. And I'm hopeful that as we reach out to some of these high schools and colleges, I'm hopeful that they're willing to work with us, at least meet us halfway, and get some of these kids through. Another aspect, as you were talking, another thing that came to mind is, for children that are refugees, some may be traumatized, and from a humanitarian aspect, once they come out to these American schools, they can also benefit from some counseling, some mental health counseling to cope with some of the things that they and their loved ones have experienced too.
I mean, that's for sure. One thing I will say is that they really are great kids, the ones that I've been dealing with. I mean, the most joy I take is just spending time around them. They're always smiling, they're laughing. So although that they've come from a background and a country that has been war-torn for the better part of the last century, they're so grateful and happy to enjoy whatever it is they can. So like when I'm hosting my sessions, for example, and I'm seeing them enjoying themselves, like I explain to them that you're trying to show coaches what you can do, but that they're having the time of their life as well. They're there with their friends, they're playing basketball, they like the jerseys too. So I make sure I take pictures of them so that they can enjoy seeing and feeling proud of themselves, So I have a great time with the kids, and I know that the coaches will appreciate, because I know that that's the kind of player that they'll be looking for. Just like you said before, hardworking, disciplined. They come from very disciplined families where they respect their elders, they're polite, they're well-mannered. The best thing about them is they're coachable. So they can be told what to do. They want to learn. They understand. They don't have ego problems or issues like that where they think they know everything. They know that they have a lot to learn. And I think, as a coach, that's the kind of kids that you want. Okay.
Now, I'm gonna test your memory a little bit. So, um, in your early beginnings, as far as when you first came up with the Dankind Academy, is there one particular player that comes to mind where you met him and you were like, wow, this kid has a whole lot of potential. I see this kid maybe making an NBA in 5 years if given the opportunity.
Yeah. Once again, basically from the moment that I arrived in Nairobi, I had people suggesting players to me, trying to get in touch with me. And then, so Deng, from in my first year, he's 7'4", and athletic. He can not just run the floor, but sprint and jump. Really coordinated. So obviously, when my players told me about him, I was like, yeah, of course. Like, let's get this guy. Let's get this guy to Nairobi.
Right.
He needs to come and join us. And I'll never forget, because I remember picking him up at the airport and just walking around Nairobi, and every single person staring at us, from people running literally across the road to come and stand beside him because he was just so tall. And he's been doing great. He moved on to Spain, actually, so he didn't go the American route, but he went to Spain, and he's been playing in the second division there.
Okay.
And just recently played for the national team. So with Luol Deng being the president of the South Sudan Basketball Federation now, I think things are going to change drastically for South Sudan. But he was one of those guys that back then it was just shocking. I've never seen anyone so tall in my life before and move that way. And to know that is not the norm, obviously. 7'4" is not normal, but that there are many 7-footers in South Sudan, I think is crazy concept. So that was kind of the first confirmation where I was like, yeah, this is we're on the right track. Like, this is a nation that can be developed through basketball, literally.
Yeah.
So.
I know, like in the United States, I had a former NBA executive on the show, Coach Glenn Cyprian, and I was asking him about some of his coaching experience before he got involved in the NBA, when he was coaching college and he was recruited. Yeah. And in the United States, at least like 15, 25 years ago, different regions in the United States were well known for different styles of basketball. Different regions put out certain talent in basketball positions. Like, for example, in New York or out on the Eastern Coast, you got a lot more point guards. Yep. Just like maybe 25, 30 years ago, a lot more point guards. Down south, you had a lot more skill centers, big men. Out on the West Coast, you had a lot of gifted athletes. Out in the Midwest, like the area that I grew up in Michigan, you had a lot of fundamentally sound basketball players. So as far as the African continent, I know it's a humongous continent, but just in your small areas that you've been in,
Yeah.
What would you say, like Kenya or Uganda or South Sudan? What are some of the highlights as far as style of play or skills and positions?
Well, first of all, as far as Uganda and Kenya are concerned, the guys are tough. I mean, it is no easy baskets. These guys give 120%. So it's high energy and strength is king. As far as South Sudan, once again, it's the height. So we're talking about fours and fives, athletic, mobile, coordinated bigs. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's so many different tribes within each of these countries that morphology-wise, everyone is different. The Kenyans are more similar to the Ugandans, whereas the South Sudanese are completely different, tall, skinny. Um, so yeah, there's a big difference between the three countries, but Kenya too. Kenya's been doing really well as far as international competition at the moment. And in these last qualifiers, South Sudan and Kenya were actually the two teams looking to qualify for the next stage in the AfroBasket. So, and that was a really good final, the last day there. Um, Kenya ended up winning, but once again, because of Luol Deng, this was the first time we got to see an actual South Sudanese team. There was a team that competed before, but this is the first time this new federation under Luol Deng put out a team, and so it was nice to see that. It was really promising. But yeah, they're very tall, very tall and skilled team.
For South Sudan, is it typically the Dinka tribe and the Nuer,
Yeah.
or
So obviously, these are the two tribes that have been at war since independence, and the violence has generally subsided now. But those are the two main tribes in the country, of many. But the Dinka tribe is really the tribe where the majority of the height comes from.
okay.
So the majority of NBA players, for example, from South Sudan are Dinka.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, from the outside looking in,
Yeah.
I would assume that South Sudan and Senegal would have South Sudan, Senegal, and Nigeria
Yeah.
would have the top three African basketball national teams from the outside looking in. But in reality, it hasn't worked out that way. And I just listed those three countries because I know Nigeria is highly populated.
Yeah.
They've been introduced to basketball since way, way back when.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And South Sudan, of course, you got the height.
Yep.
So, and Senegal, the height as well for a West African country. Now, I see that Tunisia and Angola has had a lot of international success in basketball. Why do you think that is so?
Yeah, Angola, for example, is the most decorated. They've been to the Olympics the most, and they went through a whole period of where they were the number one team in Africa longer. And I agree with you in that. I think Senegal, Nigeria, South Sudan have the most potential. Although there's some other countries too, Mali, for example, the Congo, DRC, where they have a lot of NBA players. Like there's certain countries that their national teams haven't reached the level that they could possibly be at. Whereas Angola has taken it seriously, obviously, for decades.
What are they doing that's different, Daniel?
I can't really comment on that. I don't know anything, to be honest, other than the success that they've had and seen them compete in international competition. So I don't really know exactly what they have going on. The only thing I really know about is the club, Primero de Agosto, who has always been very successful. And I know that they have a great arena there too. Okay. But I really couldn't comment otherwise on their success. Although the one thing that I can comment on is the opposite and what I know of the other nations. So the best of the best in Africa. Things may change now with the BAL. where
Yes.
being a professional player is now a prospect for these African players. But generally speaking, African players, as is natural resources and basically everything in Africa, is an export.
Yes.
And so when you have all of these guys that are playing in Europe or in the NBA even, it becomes harder for them to then come back and play for their nation and their national teams. South Sudan, especially, once again, like I said, Luol Deng played for Great Britain. Don Maker played for Australia. You have female South Sudanese players playing for Finland, I know now.
Oh, wow.
So it's not that it's a problem. It's great. It's great. We want these, we want our African players to do as well as they can wherever they are. But the national teams and the federations aren't set up in a way to bring these players back. And also their contracts don't allow for it as well. So yeah, once again, when we see Nigeria with a full-fledged squad with all of their NBA players, it's going to be a different thing from in the past. Same thing with Senegal. Obviously, Gorgui Deng has been playing for the national team, but for South Sudan, yeah, that can make a huge difference. In this past competition, for example, that I was telling you about in Kenya, there wasn't one of their NBA players on that team. But imagine if they did. It would be a whole different story, I'm sure. So there's certain countries, that are not maximizing on their potential just because their best players haven't played for their national team yet. And hopefully that will change, because it would be great to see. It would be
real great.
Yeah.
Now, with Luol Deng and, South Sudan having some representatives in the NBA, I hope that, my native homeland, Ghana, I hope some of our, pro ball players come back and help, develop basketball, because Ghana basketball is starting to become popular as well. We're more known for boxing and soccer, but basketball is starting to, get popular as well. Daniel, I want to thank you for your time. This is definitely the first of many meetings that we're going to have, even, away from the camera. I hope to reach out to you, and I definitely want to be part of your movement. Yep. I want to be an instrument for you to reach out and help some of our young ball players. The African diaspora has taken us to so many different countries in the world, but, we're all brothers at the end of the day. Hope to have you. I hope to be a part of your movement, man. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you. One suggestion I would have is maybe getting in touch with Pops Mensah Bonsu.
Okay, the British Ghanaian guy, British.
Yeah, he's planning on doing exactly this in collaboration with Amadou Fall from Senegal.
Okay.
Bringing the Seeds project to Ghana. So that's another person. He's a GM of a D-League team, a G-League.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So, maybe that's someone also that, it would be interesting for you to interview. I know he's been doing a lot of podcasts with Luol Deng, which I was watching during the pandemic. But thanks so much for having me on here too. I appreciate it. And we'll definitely keep in touch and see what we can do to keep pushing things forward, giving these kids opportunities, developing and just having a positive impact in Africa. So,
without a doubt, I'm going to leave you with one message for all the young ballers back in the motherland. Guys, keep working hard at your craft, and just know that, there's people in your corner, people there to support you, and guys like Daniel are doing their part to help you guys get to the next level, man. So don't give up hope. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thanks. Thank you.